Because it's a lot easier to have a conversation about division than unification. It's a lot easier because destruction is loud,
Mm.
progress is quiet. If there's a tree outside my window, and hopefully there's a tree outside everybody's window in this case. If that tree fell down right then and there and stumbled over and just cracked and fell and crashed into the ground, everybody would look out their window or go outside and look for it.
Mm.
If right this moment that tree is growing, nobody's saying a word. Destruction is loud, progress is quiet. Well, it's up to us to make that shift, to realize the duality of the sides.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up.
Hi guys, welcome back to Neff Inspiration, a show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today I've got Cesar Cardona with me, and I'm really looking forward to this interview because we both share a very, very strong link when it comes to looking at our environment and onto the division that has increasingly become so apparent. Certainly, it's no longer the United States, it's the divided states of America. We have seen that over the last 5 years, that's for sure, and it had started much earlier. The same, however, holds true for many of the other countries I've lived in, had the honor of working in, and it is true for everywhere. And this is not how we can create the best version of ourselves or the best version of this world. We can do so much better. Both Cesar and I are convinced about that. And today we talk about social division and how we can address that to reduce some of the trauma that we keep inflicting upon ourselves. So Cesar, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
It's such a crazy thing, isn't it? Have things gotten worse? Or is that just an impression for us? What is your take on that?
This might be one of my favorite conversations in the world right now because it's so easy to go right on the impression of what's being shown to you, right?
Huh.
Two things. One, calamity has always happened in this world.
Huh.
You have one person and another person, they disagree. And before we learn how to be rational, thinking, meditative people, one smashed the rock over the other person's head because they didn't agree. Then that happened. They go back to their tribe and they say, you know what that guy did? He brought a rock to that fight. And they go get their tribe and the other side gets their tribe and they battle it out. Now let's compound that to about 1 million. And then let's introduce devices that connect us from where I'm sitting to where you're sitting and beyond. It's going to highlight much more of the division. In no way do I think the division here is not highly relevant and huge in this society. I also think that we are missing out on the river of sameness that is right next to us, and yet we're dying of thirst.
Ooh, beautifully said. And it is the old thing, the old theme. If you have got, okay, let's say yesterday night, I had the most beautiful sunset and a very, very cloudy sky, but the sun was breaking through. So literally, I had the choice. I could focus on the dark clouds or I could focus on the sunset. It was my choice at that moment in time. And I loved the contrast. So I chose both, focused on the dark and the light. And the contrast was making life more interesting. And I think that's very similar to the divisions and the hate that we see out there. And having said that, I mean, hate was there all the time. I mean, you look at your upbringing and look at the maybe the upbringing of your parents. You had sort of some very strong um, polar differences, I guess, in your upbringing. Was that kind of division not modeled in your immediate past life?
Immediately.
Mm.
I mean immediate. And if you mean past life as in my childhood, or do you mean
Sorry, no, I chose the
previous?
wrong word. I also believe in past lives, but I mean you're you are now a version of yourself that is going out there as a speaker, etc. There was a different version of you when you were
Mhm.
younger, and there was a different version as a child. So let's focus on this lifetime, but the different versions of you in this lifetime.
Right. Cool. Yeah. You're not on the same page in that, my friend. It was without question from the beginning separate and divided. I have no recollection of my two parents getting along. My father is a Spanish man from New York City and a Republican. My mother is a Black woman from the South, from North Florida, essentially. Um, I never saw them getting along. They already were at odds by the time I was old enough to have memory. Uh, but by the time they both started getting into a role of being on the other ends of my life, I should say after their divorce, I would spend time with both of them separately in their respective families. And
Mm.
I got an entirely different viewpoint of the way the world works from spending time with them. And then I have to go out in the world with these two things. And also on top of it, looking like I look. I don't look like I'm just only Spanish or just only Black. I don't speak the way the people in the South would speak to each other. I don't even speak Spanish. So I was not Spanish enough for the Spanish side, not Black enough for the Black side. And then, of course, I go anywhere else and they're like, who's this guy with his hair and his skin color and so on and so forth. Here's the note about all of it is I wasn't able to feel a part of any sort of quote unquote tribe, and I was able to experience and appreciate every single tribe because I didn't have to pledge allegiance to one or the other. That opened me up to see the commonality of all of them. Now, that took me a while to get there, obviously, because I spent most of my life having that internal battle. Who am I? Where am I going? Who am I supposed to be? Both of these
Mm.
sides are speaking to parts that can be effective. And also, both sides are speaking from places that um, can allow themselves to either stumble over their thoughts or be ran over because they're being too peaceful. It's a very hard challenge, you know. So I spent most of my life trying to find who I am and who I could be in this place. And I've gotten to a space now where I realize the yin and the yang is what really matters. You make a point about the darkness and the light. Both those are necessary. Fall, spring, summer, winter, day, night, the two wings of a plane. We spend so much of our time here trying to look at the two ends of a line and say, I'm over here, I'm over there. And I feel like at some point there'll be a light shined behind it, and you realize the two ends are just two opposites of a circle that just goes round and round and round. And I don't think that we're seeing that is the moment. I think social media and the media itself are designed to show us how divided we are. My job is to not be angry or blame them. It's to find the cause, to be kind of like a doctor and say, what's the symptoms here?
Mm.
These people who don't understand the unity and also are probably at some capacity slaves to their own impulses in the world, what they want, where they want to be safe, money, material. Again, I'm not here to blame. Blaming is only going to bring fire to me. So I'm not going to allow that in my body when I'm recognizing these people. But I can see the cause of it. Those same people want that security, and they happen to be in charge of all the stuff that we're using in the world.
Mm.
And then they know that it's in our biology to want to be fearful about who's across the Serengeti, like our ancestors did.
Mm.
So they're going to lean into that because it's a lot easier to have a conversation about division than unification. It's a lot easier because destruction is loud,
Mm.
progress is quiet. If there's a tree outside my window, and hopefully there's a tree outside everybody's window in this case. If that tree fell down right then and there and stumbled over and just cracked and fell and crashed into the ground, everybody would look out their window or go outside and look for it.
Mm.
If right this moment that tree is growing, nobody's saying a word. Destruction is loud. Progress is quiet. Well, it's up to us to make that shift, to realize the duality of the sides.
Oh, I love your analogies. They're beautiful.
about that.
And you're so right. If it bleeds, it leads. It has always been the motto of the press, and it works on that. And what you're saying is tapping deep into the limbic system and is tapping deep into our desires to be safe. And we are hardwired like that. So it's not anyone's fault. On the contrary, it is actually a benefit to the human species to be hardwired to be fearful. If you think about it, about 80,000, 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day we have, about 80% of them are negative. And they are negative in order to protect you. The fear is there because if you're just walking around and think, oh, that's a cuddly little bear, and that bear is about 3 meters tall and is about to eviscerate you, yeah, it's not so good for your survival. So it's much better to think, oh, that big thing over there, it will eat me. Oh, it's a rock. Okay, I got away with it. So this is we are working on some impulses that are hardwired into you, and they are not wrong. They helped us to survive. But we now need to be careful because there are people out there who make a hell of a lot of money out of harnessing that fear and harnessing that temptation. Basically, we are manipulated. I think that is the best way of putting it in a very simple way. And both the left and the right, or whatever division we take, are using these mechanisms, these inbuilt fear of the future for their advantage, not for our advantage. This is no longer advantage of the human species. This is about making money and changing your voting or changing your buying behavior, etc. I think that's what pisses me so off. I think there is, if we were still on something honorable here or something positive, okay, I would go along with it, even if I understand that it is manipulation of the masses. But manipulation of the masses, yeah, we've seen what happens with that in 1933. Or we've seen with that what happened over the last 5 years, 10 years in the United States. There's not so much difference there, actually. So we both have got the same insights. And here we are talking about this, but in reality, things seem to have gotten worse. It seems to have gotten worse. And maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to have gotten worse because the education of children is no longer with regards to history. It is no longer with regards to an understanding of social differences. Already the education is polarized and creates division. Would you not agree with that?
I would agree. I would agree to that, and I would add to it as well that it's also an education system, and if we're primarily speaking in America and or the industrialized education system, it is based upon something that is becoming obsolete over time. Going into the factory, showing up to a clock, learning the basic fundamentals of things that will employ you to an actual factory or office, and that is slowly going away because we have so many self-entrepreneurs, so many I can't think of the word at the moment, but where somebody is paid for their own services and their own production to give back out instead of going into a big factory and doing this work. The school system is still based on that old way, that industrial era way. We're getting into the information era now. So the school system, if it doesn't pick itself up, they're not going to think for themselves because they're not being taught critical thinking. They're not being, excuse me, they're not all of it is not all the schools are being taught that. I live in Los Angeles, and a lot of schools are having classes on how to read AI and how to read a text and tell if it's AI or not. How to understand what the depression is that's caused from screen time, too much screen time. If they're teaching that sort of stuff, you might keep in mind though, LA is a very forward-thinking city. So let's zoom out of it and say into the country. That stuff is still being taught to just show up, learn the basics, and not take in any new information because this is what has worked for the last 200 years. And that makes us not have the ability to think for ourselves. And then that makes us walk into a factory or go into a job. And then the bit of time that we have left for the day, we don't want to have to think for ourselves. So where do we go? Social media. the
Mm,
news.
mm,
All
exactly.
the someone said it yesterday. All the three pick the 3-letter news source. Pick your letter, whichever one. CNN, NBC, ABC, so on and so forth.
Yeah. No,
And
very
those
true.
people are the ones that are sitting in a society. They're the ones that have the ability to mass broadcast this information. They're the ones producing, and you're the ones
Mm.
consuming. But the new society is turning into what Alvin Toffler called a prosumer. You can start creating your way of what you consume. There's a website called informationisbeautiful.com. And in there's a tab, and it's called Beautiful News. And it has science-based data behind all the progressive things that are happening in the world. Tons of them. Tons of them. There's a multitude of them. You just go on there and you can find just so many of like, for example, one of them is the US gender gap pay is shrinking. Biologists have found a method to convert all donated blood to type O. Things are going up, life expectancy. Investment in renewable energy from 2005 until 2019 has increased by 31%. Tell me where the news says any of those things. And yet that information is still available to us. Why aren't they
Excellent.
talking about that?
Yeah.
This is I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but
Oh,
I have friends of mine who they just love the news, and the news will come on and talk about. And Los Angeles is a big city. It's a massive county, excuse me, and they'll on the news they'll bring up with the 5 minutes they have to tell you what's going on. They're going to talk about a high speed chase or a robbery that happened a good hour and a half from where you live. That is horrible that robbery happened, and it should be dealt with without question in a more cause and effect manner rather than a disciplined, hardwired, old style American way. But tell me what does that give me right now? What information does that share with me about my environment?
zero.
Why, So I'm saying all this to add to it is that, and I kind of went off topic from what your question was,
Not
but
at all. Not at all. Because your point is so valid. This is where we get distracted. I strongly, strongly believe that many of the stories in the news are essentially there for one good reason, to distract us from those things that are really happening, those things that are really there. I mean, a comedian recently looked at the issue of the seemingly UFOs or the drones over New Jersey, etc. And he was sort of saying, hey, here we've got, the first contact, or we have got maybe China doing things, etc. And now suddenly the new year is here and it doesn't matter anymore. And now we are focusing on something completely new. And he was far more eloquent than I did, but the point that he made is quite true. It was the big headline news, and then 3 days later, yeah, okay, and we are focusing on something else. Hang on, hang on. So, and there's quite some there are quite some voices out there, whistleblowers from uh, from another group of alphabet soup agencies like CIA, NSA, etc., who are saying, well, hang on, many of these informations that are given to us in the media are nothing other than essentially smokescreens that are there to distract from the reality of something else happening. And I think that is so important. I think when it comes to news, we could talk for hours and days about it, and we both agree on it. I think we can summarize that with two questions that you should always ask. Question number one is, what they're telling me, is that true? And secondly, why are they telling me that? And I think if we use these two questions to cross-examine everything that comes into our life, then I think we are much stronger and getting much better to actually be there. And some friends of mine, they say, no, I don't watch any media at all because it's anyhow all bullshit. What do you think about that? Is that the
I
way
love that.
forward?
I mean, I love that concept. If some people have said the same thing to me, the next thing I say is, okay, then what are you doing instead?
Very good.
I mean,
Very good.
I'm a Buddhist, right? So there's a lot of branches of Buddhism, but the two main vehicles of Buddhism are the Theravada and the Mahayana. And the Theravadas are the elder Buddhists, and they have gone somewhere from realization about the way nature works. And for the most part, their concept is once we've gained this, let's just kind of slowly pull ourselves away from the activity of the world. They still help out and still so on and so forth. But it's almost like they have the vehicle and they've understood something and they said, okay, cool. We're going to keep this and we're going to sit here. Someone comes to us, we'll help them out. And that's it. Great. Okay. Then there's the Mahayana side. The Mahayana Buddhists have the same, essentially, realization about the way the world works.
Mm.
And instead of saying we're just going to sit here and keep it, it's like, well, on. That means if I found the realization, I don't have to, I can go anywhere with it. I can go anywhere I want with this information. Let me go out into the world and help people find their version of it as well. I don't need you to be a Buddhist. I want you to find your piece also. So if someone says to me, I don't watch the news. I don't watch news whatsoever. Okay, cool. So now are you just sitting at home in this small space and saying, here I am, not sitting watching the news? Or are you going out into the world, and either are fine, by the way, are you going out into the world and saying, I'm not watching the news, this is what I found instead? Are you being more active in whatever you want to do? I'm not telling somebody to go take that job of going to share all this information. I applaud them to not watch the news, but my next question is, well, then what are you doing instead? Because you got a lot of time in this life. People say life is short. I don't agree. There's a lot of life. What are you doing with it, though? What are you doing with it?
That's an interesting point of view that life is not short. But then again, that is the catastrophizing in us. That's the fear
Right.
in us speaking. It's not the life of abundance that we could live. And it's this abundance that is there every second of the day. In fact, we all have got the same amount of seconds in the day, isn't it? And some of us who are incredibly productive and are creating a new world out there, well, they have got the same seconds in the day. They have the same needs of having sleep, etc. But they are prioritizing different things, and they probably have done a little bit of work on their inner self and their core beliefs that they do no longer get as easily distracted and manipulated by media or the opinions of others. How do you deal with the opinions of others? Because often, I mean, especially going back to your upbringing, there would have been very strong opinions, and your parents would have loved you to follow in their footsteps, but they're clearly opposite, going in opposite directions. You were torn, and that being torn is never a good thing because you can't satisfy both needs. So you ended up in trouble in the past with that. Um, what made it different to today?
From where I was before, what
Yeah,
makes a difference?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to start with a personal story, if I may,
Uh-huh.
to kind of expand what you just said about being torn apart. When I was about 4, maybe 5, my I'm going to speak ambiguously between the two parents. Just to, again, anything I say about them is, again, not blaming. It's finding the cause of who I am.
Yeah.
It's the same exact method, because to blame is only going to make me angry. I don't need anger in my life. That doesn't help anything. And they did the best they could. If they could have done better, they would have done better. So it's a cause, not a blame. Either way, I am 4 or 5 years old, and one of my parents, I was staying with them in their place. The other parent had been gone for, they would often leave. They would be gone for months, weeks, whatever. However, at some point, parent B, who was always leaving, would call and say, I want to see my son. And parent A would say, you got to come home, you know? And then that started friction between the two of them. One night, I'm sitting in that living room, and parent B just shows up randomly, rushes straight to me, makes a beeline, pun intended, to me, and grabs me while parent A grabs the other part of me. and they begin a tug of war with my body about where I should go. One of them's yelling, "Give me my son." The other one's yelling, "No." Back and forth. Meanwhile, I'm four, being tugged, being ripped apart. Actually, the rest of my life became that tug of war, which led me to what you're saying about the bit of trouble I would get into afterward. When I got older, my teenage years, all of that anger that I had been raised around was just ready. It was ready to cook. The water was boiling. You could pour all the pasta in all you want and have all the Alfredo sauce and do all the, whatever. And so when I was 13, 14, 15, 16, I started acting out. And I joined a gang in the neighborhood, and I was being really violent, and I was aggressive, and I had hurt a lot of people physically, and I got hurt and I got arrested, just full of fire and anger, causing so much more division. The way in for me was always thinking that somebody was thinking the wrong thing about me and that I need to show them who I really was. There goes my external reward system. Not once did I realize, hang on, what's in here? What's inside me is where the determination of who I am is the determination of who I am. It's only until I got older and I got out of all that lifestyle, I moved 3,000 miles away to Los Angeles and went through a bunch of trials there too. But it's only until I sat with the self and realized, I see. All of my fears that I thought of the outside world was trying to attack me with were the ones living within me. The Buddha says, 1,000 of tens of thousands of men can do no harm compared to the person who can do harm to themselves. You can spend all of your life trying to avoid every single scenario externally, but you'll never be able to stop the pain internally unless you eradicate it and address it directly from you to you. Once I started working through that, once I started rooting like a tree root, getting roots in the soil of who I was as a person, and then slowly peeling away what I thought I was supposed to be, and peeling away the aggression and anger that I had for the parents who were violent to me and then also just abandoned and neglected me for so long. Once I started removing those expectations away, I found this crown jewel living within me. It became a lot easier to recognize that someone's words, thoughts, and actions pertaining me were just mere offerings of their own projections of their life. So let's like get a little more direct and a little more material with it. Someone at me, someone thinks negatively of me, says something negatively of me. I will without question feel it. I'm human. That's just what we do. Again, we're biological, right? We need to know that bear, if it's a bear or if it's a rock, right? Like you said. How I take that fire is completely up to me. So that someone's anger is not going to influence my ultimate choice. I'm the president of my body. Any person who gives me information about me are just cabinet members. They're part of parliament. They are just giving me their version of how they see the world. This is not me taking it on. I don't have to take on what they say. If someone offers me food and I say no thank you, that's still their food. The same thing goes with anger.
Sure. I like that. I like that a lot. We have those choices, but we often are victims to our own drives, to our own core beliefs, to our own subconscious programming, which often enough has helped us in the past. As a child, the people pleasing let you survive in a hostile environment called family, or the the anger that drove you forward. And I guess this determination that so many young men feel can be very positive, can be a very powerful driver in your life. And some societies are clearly supporting that and encouraging that. The American society, most definitely. You're a self-made man. Look at you. And there is no glass ceiling for a woman. I can do it all. I want to have children. I want to have a top career. I want to do it all. I want it now. And that kind of self-made uh, success story is very much supported. But it can also be such a disastrous quagmire of it's tap dancing in a minefield, because not only will you inevitably end up with burnout because you can't just keep going according to the norms of that society. And when I label here the United States, I could just as much say Europe, because we are just not different. And it's probably the same for Asia. When I look at the fate of so many young men and women who do nothing else than study for exams. And if they don't pass the exams at that state, and there's suddenly this wave of suicides running through that level of, or that age group. And it's brutal. This is a brutal world. How can we succeed in such a society, yet maintain that level of insight? How can we as humans become more aware of those things that drive us? You have transformed. You were that fighter, that anger-driven man, and it served you to survive. It served you to first survive in in society A, and then you went to LA. And again, I dare to say it helped you to survive there, living in your car, and helped you to get on with life. But you transformed. What was the catalyst?
It's a massive question, a very massive question. The first thing first, the individual in this society in the industrialized era is obviously, like you said, highly coveted. And it has brought so many amazing things. And at the same time, it's just been blinded about the multitude of people that help that individual. That phrase,
Good.
self-made individual, it is I don't know if I can cuss on here, but it's BS. It is bad science. If I can quote someone I know, my girlfriend's 11-year-old. She said it's BS. I was like, yeah, you're right. She goes, bad science. She goes, bad science. She goes, yeah, we say bad science in school so we don't get in trouble. It's BS though. I was like, oh,
I love it. I love it. I'll take. Sorry, I have to steal that.
please do. It's so good. It's so good. Um, so clearly it's not the case. Every single we are succumb to the history of the information that got us here. And then when you want to build something, you need a multitude of other people around you.
Mm.
There are no self-made people here. It's an understanding that we symbolize these people, the Bezos of the world, the Musks of the world, and so on and so on. Please do me a favor and look up their childhood and tell me that they just grew up in a cage by themselves, broke out of the cage on their own, wandered into a school, stole some books, read in the jungle, came back out of the jungle, and then said, you know what, I'm going to build a business. And then they built a brick and mortar. And then no, that's not how it works. I could keep going on and on and on with the strange, preposterous quagmire, to use your word from before. That's not what happens. That's not what happens.
Yeah.
We are not self-made in this society, no matter how much we want to paint it. It's not how it works. So my catalyst was dropping of my ego, thinking that it was just me. I'm going to preface by saying that this is just a me thing. I'm not putting this lack of belief on other people at all. But for about 10 years, I was a strict material reductionist based atheist, only in science. Again, prefacing again, this is a me thing, and it brought out the worst in me. Not saying atheism does that to other people, but for me, it does. It doesn't, because I was abandoned as a child. So tell me why growing up, a belief of that I'm alone, that there is no other thing that is connected to me, tell me how that's going to serve. And it didn't serve me, it made me worse. And I spent all of my time being more isolated and more isolated and more isolated. The catalyst was to the point of where every one of my choices in life got me to a point. And this was, what, 6 years, maybe 7 years into living in LA, got me back to the point where I almost ended up sleeping in my car again. I had built a self-employed business of being a boxing trainer. I had played a ton of shows and I was writing music and I was doing all the external things, but the money I was making and all the funds I was getting from it, I was pissing it away on horrible things because I thought I was the only one who could figure this out. So my catalyst for it, the actual catalyst, was a sledgehammer to my reality, because I literally thought that I had it all figured out and I was the only thing in the world. So it took a while for me to get rid of my ego, my me-ness, for lack of a better term. Which is also to say that ego also reminds you have to eat. It reminds you got to look left and right before you cross the street. So it's not like you toss it out of the car, but it should not drive that wheel. It should sit in the back seat with a map and kind of help you out. And it gives you input, and you hear that. But you can't let it drive, because it's the same thing that's going to honk the horn at the person and hop out and street fight the person for not using a signal. That's what ego does. Ego is trying to preserve you, and it's nice, and I appreciate that, but you got to take a seat, ego. You got to sit back for a bit and let the calm version of the self look into the world. And when I broke that room full of mirrors, when I broke it, I saw the entire world waiting for me, to paraphrase Jimi Hendrix. I recognized that moment. And then from there, these last 6 years, I think almost 7 now, I've been a Buddhist, has cracked open so much. And I could simply boil it down to, and perhaps maybe I should have started with this. If you want, this is an African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
That's a very good proverb, actually.
They got good ones. They have another one that's don't test the river with both feet. If the river's too fast, it's going to wipe you off your feet. So you got to put one leg in and get back out. I like that one a little more, honestly. It's clever.
It's interesting the way you've put it. Having said that, to put the ego aside is one of the hardest things you could ever do, because your ego has protected you for a long time. It has been there for you. It has been looking out for you. I find it, however, such a destructive force, because my ego has been holding me back for a long time. And you think you got it sorted, and then in reality, you look at your life and it's all external validation. It's all everything from the outside that somehow matters. And once you strip it back, you come to a point where you actually find, or at least where the voices tell you, that you're nothing, that you're worthless, that you are a failure. These voices must be there in your head as well. What do you tell those voices? How do you deal with them?
Yeah, they're still there without question. I know as a public speaker how most public speakers come across as like found this answer, this thing, and there's a polish that comes with it. I'm aware of it. And also I try to take as many opportunities as I can to find people that every day my brain tells me I can't do something, tells me I'm not worthy, tells me I can't do obstacle A, B, C. It tells me just go lay down. It's okay now. I'm also a sober person now. Every day it's like, don't get wasted. Just go drink. You have now. If the day is free, you're way ahead of all your stuff. Go, just have a great time. You're not gonna hurt anybody. My car drives itself now. You can even drive because it drives itself. all of these little, like, just, these little, it's like right at your shoulder, just tapping, 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 right? Anyway, that's a whole different conversation.
But this
Those
is
fears.
so, it's so important because these voices are there, and many of us believe them. Many of us are immediately put into a world of shame, of guilt, of negative emotions because of these voices. These voices are bad science, and I
Nice.
100%
Nice.
agree.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, what do you do with it? Their
Mhm.
voices are still there.
Right. Absolutely. You know, I'm writing this book. It's called Growth Mindfulness. It's the ability to be able to be stable and still mindful while still radiating your output in the world without having to chase everything. Right.
Mm,
Productive world where you have an output, you still want to be stable and rooted. Growth mindfulness. The first page says, I'm getting this out the way right now. You are not your thoughts. You are
mm.
not your feelings. You are not your beliefs. You are not your actions. Those are all temporary. Those are temporary moments, and they all change over time. Um, that being said, I I I don't have it in me to have the attempt to want to eradicate the fearful voice, the voice telling me you can't do this. There's something in it that is letting me know there's some sort of sliver of truth in there that I have to use for my benefit. A broken clock is right twice a day.
Mm.
So there's some sort of truth in what the fear is. It's not true that I can't do this. It's be mindful of pitfalls, perhaps.
Mm.
You know, um, Abraham Lincoln, the president of the United States, the 15th, I want to say, who abolished slavery. When he was an attorney, he got a case, and when he met the other partners in the case who were on his side, one of them, I want to say it was Seward, he met Abraham Lincoln and said, "This guy is not it. He's like a country boy. He's not even dressed right. He smells. Get him off the case." Abraham Lincoln found that out. Instead of leaving, he stayed. He was off the case, but he stayed and watched the case in court. And he witnessed that man who was just efficient at his job, who had him kicked off of the case. When Abraham Lincoln later became president, he went and found that man and put him on his cabinet because he recognized the validity of who the man was. He recognized the talent. He recognized the ability to see through any situation and the toughness. Your fear, your ego, your input word that is negative in your own mind, it just needs a job. Give it a job. Don't try to fight it. Give it a job. It does. It's not the president. It's not the CEO of the company. It is at the very lowest, it could just be the gardener. And that's not even a low position either. That's a beautiful position, honestly. But when you find that every single sword that you're cutting yourself with has a sword on the other side to use to be discerning against the out in the world, then you will have you will have sheaths of power for you to follow the metaphor. I would say to any person who has those, to be more practical, any person who has those voices, just sit with it and say, what are you trying to tell me?
Mm.
Where are you being unheard? Where do you feel unfulfilled? And let's find that.
Very nice. It is a skill to do that. And every skill needs practice. And we need to understand, we need to have that radical self-compassion to understand that we can't immediately get it right. But with practice, you can learn seemingly impossible things that when you look down the line a year, 5 years, and things that you can suddenly do, which were impossible a year or 5 years ago. It is amazing. So tiny baby steps towards learning that. but keep it on your radar and basically make every day an attempt to achieve that. And what you're saying is basically stop, cross-examine your thoughts, cross-examine your drivers, your core beliefs, and try to understand where they are coming from. And I guess that's full circle to where we started when we talked about division, because there's not just division in society and division in religion and division in everything else in life. There's also division in us. There's on the one hand, there is that version of ourselves that wants to keep the status quo, because however painful it is, at least we're used to it. And then there is the other version who is potentially embracing the discomfort of stepping outside of your comfort zone and is embracing the fear. It's just as afraid as everyone would be, maybe even more so, but it's willing to accept that fear as the price to be paid for progress, for becoming a better version. And I think that is so wonderful. Instead of us escaping our reality with the social media, with alcohol, with drugs, with whatever behaviors we think, we could actually sit still. And instead of running away, we could cross-examine what we don't want to do. And you've made me think in so many directions, and it's lovely the way you have put it, because you have already set my mind on a track of addressing that. My core, one of my core patterns of behavior is fear avoidance. That is something that has driven me for a long time.
Say that again, you
And
said?
fear avoidance as a pattern
Mm.
of doing the wrong thing or not doing anything. If I can avoid it, then seemingly it's fine. For example, reading emails. If I don't read the email, I don't see the negative, I don't know, whatever reminder of a bill or whatever it is. And about 50% of the population have got these kind of more negative or less productive patterns running in our background. We are not reaching out and we're not saying hello to that beautiful girl or to that handsome fella because we rather want to avoid the feeling of being let down. It's those kind of things. So that is something that's driving me, yet you have given me a workaround. Um, it's just the way you allowed me to rethink m my own behavior. So the division within us, my goodness. Okay. If you could go back to your younger self, what would you tell your younger self? What would you tell that person that was in LA, that boxing instructor? That young man who was kicking ass, taking numbers, and making money.
Great question. I'm glad you gave me a timeline of which younger self, because whew,
I
there's,
know there's so many versions of us, isn't it? But we need
yeah,
to
there
start
really is.
somewhere. I mean,
Sure,
trauma
sure.
comes in layers, healing
Yeah,
comes in layers. So let's
yeah.
start with that young, angry dude who, whilst angry, was also successful.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. The layers, beautifully said. Yeah, I think about him quite often. The other day there was a memory on my phone, a Facebook memory that I did a live when I was like 24, 25, and I saw myself. And I hadn't seen myself in a while like that. And I saw him, and the poor boy, he was just so like, just wrapped to his impulses. Every new thing he had to talk about and like jump into. And he was a little, he was like rigid on the outside because he was just hiding the soft inside, really. So when I think about him, I feel like it's thinking about a younger brother. It really feels like a younger brother, which is very interesting. Like a troubled younger brother. What I would say to him, um, in phrasing, I would say to him, you are fine right where you are. You are more safe than you think. If I need to give him instruction for, down the line, I would say to them, slow down. Just slow down a little bit. Take a moment, slow down. Because you're safe. I guess they're one of the same. Slow down because you're safe.
So hard because when we are in that mode, we can't see that. We are in a self-destructive force, in a force field. We are just keep going, keep going, keep going.
So
Because
let's
the,
take. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
no, 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 no. Because to stop means you have to feel. And
Right.
when you don't have when you don't have the ability to deal with those emotions, when you have close to zero emotional intelligence, because that's really the person you're describing, that's hell. If you suddenly have to do that and to do that without guidance, bloody hell. Ah, tricky.
I don't know if it's. I don't know if there's an actual physical hell that happens after life or not. There could be. There couldn't be. I'm a little indifferent, honestly. It's more about what you're doing right here, right now. I
Yeah.
will say, the hell I do know is the one that you can experience now by being a slave to those impulses. That's what I know for sure. I want to say, I know this is a me oriented interview here, but I want to turn the question towards your way and say, what would you want the person, the Stefan 10 years from now to tell you today?
Oh, that it's all right to feel like that. That there was a sense and that it was important to experience the darkness, to become the more humble version of yourself, to see that you can rebuild a life in such a way that is not go, 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 but in a way that is calmer and more holistic, where you truly look after yourself and where you truly, therefore, are the best version of yourself and can therefore be a better husband and look that all this pain you have gone through is now making you a man who is so much more complete. I think
That
that is what I would like to send back.
that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Wow, what a
You
cool exercise.
got your marching orders, my friend.
Okay, now that
we,
is a
we spent a
powerful.
lot of we spent a lot of time thinking like, what would you tell your former self? Like, you know what? Think about your future self. What would they want to tell you? It's like it's you said it wonderfully. Everything you said was really beautiful, man. That's precious. That's very precious of you. I could even see from watching you while you're talking about that and while you're saying it, I could even see your body language change a little bit. When you and I've been talking this whole time, you have a stillness for sure, but a lot of you have a lot of energy and when you speak,
Hmm.
and it's a lot of gravitas in it. And in that moment, you got quiet and your words just kind of flowed out of you a little bit there. That's a beautiful thing.
And as a functional medicine specialist and as a doctor who understands the body, I want to tell you all and feedback to you. It also goes the other way around. I have naturally become calm when I focused on the beauty of the future. And that was nice. You can also learn how to change the physical state of yourself by certain rituals, by learning how to become still. And that will be reciprocally affecting your chaos in your mind. You can change your physical state first and then alter with that on purpose, alter your mind. So it's a double, well, how do you,
Two-way street.
yeah, it's a double, that's right.
Two-way street.
So
Yeah,
back and forth,
yeah.
we can use both ways. And I think that is so beautiful. When we there are many studies out there that show you that certain behaviors Take a tennis player who is very meticulous, bouncing his ball 3 times, arranging his water bottles in a specific way. That's their ritual. That's their lucky socks. And whilst you could say, well, what a heap of baloney, in reality, they are priming themselves to success. They have found a way to change their physical state and with that change their mind. We can do the same. So if you're torn out there, if you feel divided, if you feel chaos overwhelming you like a tsunami, there are ways. Well, you can't necessarily change the circumstances that giving you that chaos, but you can change your state. And suddenly you can learn how to become more calm. As a Buddhist, you will have explored probably breath work, probably meditation. Um, what are some of the low-hanging fruits that maybe people could learn or utilize on a more regular basis that would allow them to calm their mind? Because that would be the first step to overcome division. That would be their first step, either division within themselves or division within their family, within their wider society. What are the ways that you have changed your own states in, and how did you do that in recent months and years compared with the angry young man that you were earlier?
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody should start with finding out that how to calm that division within themselves before they go out into the world. That's the first thing you got to do. That being said, the meditation is a huge part of it because it does what I said earlier. It separates you from your thoughts, and it's not a big separation. You don't need to be detached in the world. You
Hmm.
just need a sliver of space
Hmm.
between that initial thought and your awareness of it.
Hmm.
Because again, you're not your thoughts, your words, your actions. Those are byproducts of your experiences in life. The awareness that had the experience and the awareness that is the responding experience or actions out in the world, that self, that's who you really are. So how do you tune into something like that? The most effective, the one of the most effective ways, and it also happens to be quite simple, is watching your breath. Wherever you are in this moment, if you're as long as you're not driving, don't do that. But if you are sitting listening to this wherever, just be aware of your breath. If you can, close your mouth and just inhale and exhale and find and feel the air going into the triangle of the nose, how it feels running through your nostrils, the edge of your nose, feeling it, the air rise in your chest. And then when you let it out, just be aware of the breath going out of your chest, out through the nostrils. Just follow that breath in and out. And you'll find yourself becoming more calm. Just just becoming aware of it. You don't have to do anything else but realize the air that's going in and going out. And what's going to happen eventually is you're going to have a leading thought that shows up in your mind. Where am I right now? What do I got to do laundry? What bill is up next? What did I say to my friend yesterday? I should have said it better.
Hmm.
The thoughts are endless. Your job is to not push them away. Your job is to not go with them either. You just realize you were doing that and you go right back to your breath. 1,000 times you're going to have distracting thoughts. 1,001 times you'll go back to your breath. You can do that anywhere. I mean, again, if you're driving, I wouldn't, focus on your driving, but you can still be aware of your breath. You can do it in the waiting room. You can do it at aisle 7 of a grocery store. You can do it anywhere. Just watch the breath. And the more you do that, the more it becomes habit. And you build this mental muscle that separates you from your thoughts. And like a shirt, you now are just, you have the thought temporarily. You wear the thought temporarily. And like the shirt, it goes away. You take it off. That gives you space to find a little more calm.
Love that. And just prior to us starting this interview, You saw me taking 10 seconds pause and taking the breath and doing my ritual. And it can be incredibly powerful. We have got the skills, or you can acquire the skills to tap into mechanisms that are very powerful to reset you. And if you can do that, in my case, it takes me about 10 seconds to completely switch off the world and go into interviewer mode. But I use the same skill when I have to do something challenging. I use the same thing. And it doesn't take you this long. It takes me one deep breath and a certain tricks. And it is beautiful. It's powerful. It's not something that was always there, but something I cultivated and something I learned. So I created that habit that allows me to switch things over. And if we create similar habits in other parts of our lives, we become such powerful humans. Yoda can just move aside, okay? We have that insight. We have that ability to look at the universe and come up with increasingly better answers, better solutions, better ways forward. And with that, with us becoming more powerful, I think we are able to change the way our society sometimes misbehaves. We can become leaders. And this is beautiful. The world needs leaders. It doesn't need leaders, not one leader for 320 or 350 million. No, it needs leaders right now in the circles around you. And who says you can't be that leader? You can't be that role model. You might not have the alphabet soup before or after your name. It doesn't matter. You might not have the position within your circles that maybe demands respect. It doesn't matter. If you live in a certain way and demonstrate your decision-making skills, not from a knee-jerk reflex way kind of thing, but actually from an emotionally intelligent way, that is powerful. That is a true leader. And we are so looking for leadership nowadays. Who says we cannot become those leaders that we are lacking within our families, within our groups that we are, within ourselves?
Well, that's very well said. That's beautifully said, my friend. We I think the vitalized person vitalizes.
I like
That,
that.
that, that's Joseph Campbell. I mean, he's my guru. I just adore that man. Uh, the note, it's but you have to start right where you are.
Yeah.
Just going what you're saying. Once you get to that breath part, that you start shedding off those things, and the power and the beauty that's in you is that
Mm.
that jewel that
Yeah.
lives within you. That's how I'm able to say to any person listening to this show, if I never meet you ever, I still know you have that pure jewel living within you.
Mm.
Because the way in is breath, and you find your version of it. The Sanskrit word for breath or air is prana. And one of the definitions is life source, essence.
Mm.
And that sort of breath brings you up into a way of thinking. It frees you up to have the better ideas. It inspires you, if I may say, which the
Mm.
etymology word inspire is to breathe, take in the spirit, take in the spirit. Like that's what's happening in that moment. And that's how I'm able to say to any particular person, you already have what it takes for whatever fear that's sitting within you. I'm not here to give you mine. I I'm just here to help you walk home. I'm brushing some twigs out of the way so you don't trip and fall, but you're still walking it. I give you nothing. You have it already.
I love that. Cesar, you're an amazing man. This is a very, very deep conversation that I did not really expect to happen, but it's so beautiful to exchange these deep ideas because that is an area of growth. That is the area of stillness that we've been talking about and that we actually have been modeling here. There are interviews that go bang, 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 bang. And then there are interviews that flow like a slow creek. And I think this was an example of the latter. And it's beautiful because this is where growth happens. This is where change happens. It doesn't fit with our reduced attention span nowadays, but maybe it's good to have that opposite of what normally is modeled. I mean, what is now
Yeah.
the most successful YouTube short is 12 to 13 seconds. And you think, oh, for fudge's sake, what do you want to say in 12 to 13 seconds? Honestly, how can you change your life with that? Honestly, we need to be still. We need to have meaningful conversations and we need to grow from them and you need to have time to digest them. In fact, I mean, when we are finishing here, I need to probably just stand in the sun for a moment and actually
Oh, do
just
it,
reflect.
do
And
it, do it, do it. That's it. Sorry, I live in Southern California. I'm sorry to cut you off, my friend. I don't like interrupting people actually. When we started the video, you're like, oh, there's some light up on you because it's just my habit to like you can see probably the reflection here, but
yeah,
there's beaming light in my apartment. I Sun is everything for me.
correct. Yeah.
Highly recommend, and yeah, I'm not telling you anything to do. I'm also not telling you something that you don't know already. But that moment of standing in the sun, lifting your head towards it, closing your eyes and feeling it on your eyelids,
Mhm.
there's nothing like it. It is amazing. It does so much. I mean, obviously it's light, right?
Uh,
Illumination, enlightenment, right? And also, it's a reminder you're alive.
yeah.
You're here. You are standing right now firm as a focused vessel of energy, source of spirit, of air, of consciousness, of awareness. And you get to have that moment.
Mm.
Oh, I could write a whole article on how amazing that is.
Isn't
Again,
it?
I apologize. I apologize.
No, not at all, not at all. I've created a sleep course to teach people really the importance of looking after yourself and looking after your sleep. And one of those things is that in the morning you try to expose yourself to sunlight in, ideally 20 minutes in the sunlight and bathe in it and do whatever you need to do, but do it outside in the sunlight as such a powerful, powerful messenger from the universe to your body. Hey, it's time to wake up. Look at your circadian rhythm. It's time to embrace the world. And we have got those opportunities. We can take those opportunities, and so many of us don't. So therefore, we have today in this interview we actually touched upon so many things. Some of them a little bit more esoteric, and some of them a little bit more philosophically deep. Others some very practical things. You focus on the breath. You focus on sunshine as a modulator of our mood, of our inner being, of delivering vitamin D, and which in turn is so important for our serotonin production in the gut microbiome, etc. So you can bring it all back to our body. It's not just Larry fairy, tree hugging kind of things. No, there's pure science behind every single statement that we too made today. And I think that's so important. Yet again, there is so much other science. Oh, the world will end tomorrow. And we are focusing on the catastrophizing, not on the science that allows us to grow and become the better human beings. And you are modeling that. And that is fantastic. Fantastic. Caesar, you're an amazing man. If people want to know more about you, if they want to hear more from you and check you out, where can they go?
Absolutely. So first thing first, my website, CesarCardona.com. I assume you're going to probably put that link.
Absolutely.
Something fantastic, CesarCardona.com. That'll be a part of newsletters there. I have YouTube pages of my talks as a public speaker. The newsletter sends out, again, science-based data, good things happening in the world.
Mm,
I'm affirmations, things I found in the world, things I've just thought people would want to hear about the way the
mm,
world actually can work.
mm.
So the website is a first starter. From there, you can get to my social medias and all the other things. Cesar Cardona.
Beautiful. Guys, look down there in the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast. Whilst you're down there, please press the like and subscribe button, because that is what really drives the algorithm so that more people get a chance to listen to me talking to my guests, and in this case, to the amazing Cesar Cardona. And when I say amazing, I really mean it, because you have opened my eyes. And whilst I guess not much that we have said was groundbreaking and new, yet it was empowering and it was reinforcing me to do the right things. And again, it's a meaningful discussion that can bring us back on track, that can sort of get our compass realigned. And it's so easy in nowadays world to get distracted, to get moved away from yeah, distracted is probably the best word, because we are no longer focused on that goal that is so important to us, that goal of becoming the best version of ourselves. Many of us are so distracted they have not even created that goal. They're just bobbing like a cork on the ocean and without any direction, and are driven by the winds and driven by the currents. No, we can do so much more. And hopefully we have touched your soul today. We have touched the things below your ego, wherever and whatever they are. Okay. There is so much there, and you're in control. There is hope. There is help. And I think that is something that we keep forgetting. You're not alone. It's not as dark as you think it is. And please just give it a moment of reflection, and then take the next step in the right direction, however tiny it is. And you have already, I want to congratulate all of you. You have already done a huge step by just listening to the two of us. You've taken action. Wow. What's the next step? How else can you move forward and make this world your world, make this world a better place? By starting with yourself. Cesar, you're a great guy. Thank you so much for spending time with me. This was a very, very wonderful interview.
I'm honored to be spending time with you. Thank you as well. You are a beautiful, wonderful man.
And you guys out there, look after yourself, live with passion, live with intention. Bye.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up.